Don't spoil anything.
How can I spoil it? It's called The Farmer.
Hi guys, welcome to our Vinland Saga spoilercast. My name is Joe.
Okay.
Fuck you. I am trying to get the word out that there's actually a fucking good manga that the people should read.
Yeah, it's called Berserk, bitch.
I can appreciate...
And welcome to Anime Club After Dark, the podcast that tells into all things anime, manga, and otaku culture related. I'm your host, Alex, but you can call me Senpai, and joining me tonight, I have our Wizard of Wait What, Shinoda.
Hello.
Oh, God. Our poser extraordinaire, Natai.
Bitch.
and our chivalry of Shotaro. What was the bitch part?
Just to mess you up.
Hi.
Oh, so that's what we waited on. Okay, anyway.
Just wanted to throw you off, you know.
Yeah, all right. So before we actually get into our topic for this evening, we do have a bit of sad stuff we have to talk about first. So, a couple weeks ago, actually, about the time of this recording. Was it a couple weeks ago or was it a week ago? It was last week. It was last week. Sadly, Stan Lee, I guess we can say he's the godfather of modern comic books.
Marvel comic books, but yeah.
Yeah, well, let's be honest. He's a big part of the reason the comic book industry is as big as it is, or now. He passed away. He was 95? 95 or 96? I can't remember.
I think 95.
I don't have the article in front of me anymore.
95. I'm pretty damn sure of it.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely sad. And he actually had a bit of an impact in the anime industry. In fact, it was just last year there was an anime that he helped work on. Wasn't very
been
good.
in anime too.
Yeah.
Damn.
I'm just saying it wasn't very good, but he did work on it.
He was an influence on a lot of people, though. Like, My Hero Academia wouldn't be a thing without him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Comics have had a long-standing impact on manga and anime, and vice versa. And Stan Lee was definitely a huge impact upon the nerd world. Period. Everywhere.
Yeah, and there were a lot of
were felt.
there were a lot of mangaka who also took to like social media and stuff to express their condolences to him and his family. So I mean, his impact was felt pretty far and wide for sure. I can tell you I got to meet Stan Lee about I think 2 years ago myself. I was at MegaCon here in Orlando where I live, and I could tell back then that he was in some bad health. So I wasn't entirely shocked to hear that he had passed away.
He was an old guy.
He let me see. He lived a really, really long and very productive life. So he doesn't have anything to look back on and say, well, have any regrets. I wouldn't. I certainly wouldn't if I had lived that life. I will say though, a lot of people I don't think it's hit them yet, but I can tell you when it will. It'll be when you go to the very next Marvel movie that comes out, and you leave the theater and you realize something was missing from this movie, and it's because Stan Lee wasn't in it.
Actually, he's gonna be in this next couple of ones. They already recorded his
but the moment
because he
will
was
be like,
old,
oh.
he did have that health scare, so they figured, hey, let's go ahead and record a bunch of these scenes so they can be added in later on. So they actually have recorded a bunch of them. They have a good amount of them for the future movies, so good on that for a good while.
Yeah, I guarantee you, though, the first time you see a Marvel movie without a Stan Lee cameo in it, you're going to notice that it's not there.
That is for certain, yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking about that, like, with like, digital technology being what it is, there's really nothing to stop them from making a digital recreation of him and putting him in.
Only
it's
like
only if he's said okay on it or not. If he said no,
and who knows, he might have. Knowing Stan Lee, he might have done that.
We'll
But
see.
again,
I'm sure we'll get an announcement.
ethics.
I have this sneaking suspicion, and I don't say this to be like a jackass, but I have this sneaking suspicion that whenever the next Deadpool movie is, that's gonna make it in there somehow. Because if you think about it, even in the whole canon of like the Marvel universe, Deadpool's the only one that knows stuff that goes on outside of the Marvel universe.
Yeah. He has knowledge
Anyway.
of the everything outside the fourth wall, so yeah, he'll
Yeah.
know, and it'll be presented in the movie, without a
It
doubt.
probably will be. But anyway, it's definitely a loss to the comic book and
Just the nerd world,
the
period.
nerd world, yeah.
And
Yeah, the
creative
nerd world,
people
period.
everywhere.
Yeah. So I'm sure he will be missed, and I'm sure Marvel won't be the same without him.
Hmm.
We shall see, though. That's for a future discussion, I'm assuming. Anyway, so let's move on to what we're actually talking about tonight, and that is this idea of villains and antagonists in anime and manga, etc. So over the years, throughout the history of anime and manga, there have been some really memorable and great villains and antagonists throughout. And so we thought we'd talk about some of those tonight, and we'd also talk about some things like, some of the qualities that make for a good villain and some of the like narrative shapings of villains throughout the industry. So I think a good place to start is defining what we mean by a villain or an antagonist. So I'll start for me personally. I think that to be a villain or an antagonist in any work of fiction, doesn't have to be relegated to anime or manga. You don't have to be necessarily evil to be a villain, but you have to antagonize the protagonist of your particular story. Now, that doesn't necessarily factor in like there are certain stories out there where the protagonist sort of is the villain, and I think you have to take that into account. But for me personally, a villain is quite simply someone who antagonizes the main character of a story.
Did you just say that the protagonist could be a villain?
Well,
I
sure.
think
Let's
that
take,
there
for
are-
example,
And-
Michiko and Hachin. Michiko is
Yeah.
a villain. Therefore, a cop who would be chasing her, the cop we see who's constantly chasing her, would be the hero, technically.
Okay, so I guess I should rephrase that the antagonist or the villain can be the main character of a story.
So the main character can antagonize the main character.
Sure.
I mean, people can antagonize themselves. That's the basic
Okay.
root of mental illness.
Okay, well, I have a different definition from this. A villain is not synonymous with an antagonist. A villain is someone who is evil. That's it. Oh my god, so many ands. And an antagonist is someone who antagonizes the protagonist. And sometimes they're the same person, and sometimes they're not.
So
Can
you're
I
saying
jump
that
in?
sometimes a villain can be an antagonist, but they don't always have to be.
Correct.
Okay.
I'll say this. I think like a villain or an antagonist, like their main reason in the story, like their purpose in the story is to challenge the protagonist's ideals or values
Or actions.
or actions.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, you live that way of life. Well, then you challenge the protagonist's like status quo or way of life, and then you have a conflict. Right?
Yeah.
That's how I see it.
It's pretty standard definition, I would think, of an antagonist, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Chinoda? You agree with any of us? You got your own definitions.
Villainy is inherently complicated. And
I didn't
Like-
say write a poem.
It's an haiku.
damn, I want to go deep, and y'all fucking start laughing at me. I'm gonna fucking cry. You know what? That makes you guys villains. Whoa.
That's true.
Dun dun dun.
I'm an arch villain.
So,
Oh boy.
Can I be
as
the
I
cat?
see it,
The evil cat.
simply, there's way too many variations for there to be a single definition, but I think if we get it down to the basics, it has to be the character that antagonizes the main character. doesn't matter who's good or who's evil necessarily. It's just who are we rooting for versus who's against them. Now, of course, a good amount of scumbags root for the other side, of course, because they're better, obviously. But that is how I see it personally.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So, knowing all of this, what are some of the qualities that we all think make for a good villain? And Shinoda, you have to go first on this
The
one. Because
goddamn laugh! And you know who has the best goddamn laugh ever? Fucking
Kira?
Orochimaru.
Kira.
Kira has a damn good laugh, too. There are so many villains with good laughs, and I love them all. If they have a laugh that's memorable, I love my boys. Or girls.
The problem with Orochimaru's laugh, Shinoda, is that you have to specify which one, because the first time you hear him laugh, he sounds like a little girl.
Oh, yeah, you're right. The one. God, I am doing that horribly. I barely remember it.
I mean, for those who haven't seen Naruto, or if you've seen the Monogatari series but you haven't seen Naruto, it's basically like Shinobu's laugh, but instead of kaka, it's ke.
I mean, Black Hanako has a pretty good laugh, and she's sort of a villainous like force. Yeah, in Bake.
Yeah. There are some really good laughs in anime. Although not necessarily a villainous laugh. He thinks he's a villain is Okabe's laugh when he is Hoin Kyoma in Steins Gate.
Hoin Kyoma desu.
He's like,
Ooh, another one, Alucard from Hellsing and Hellsing Ultimate. His laugh is damn memorable.
mm-hmm.
Ooh, gets the floodgates going.
That's about to say that goes beyond like an evil laugh to where it's almost an arousing laugh.
I mean, he's aroused half the damn time, so...
That's true. That's true. Oh man, like I said, Kira from Death Note, I think, has a really good laugh too. Kira, light.
That's right. Mamoru Miyano again.
Again, Mamoru Miyano. Oh my God, Mamoru Miyano. I fucking love that guy. He should just play villains. Men. He should really just play villains. I swear to God, he should.
Mm-hmm.
He is a legend for a reason.
Yes.
Shall we move on to the next point?
Yeah, I mean, we could sit here for fucking hours and just recount good laughs, I think. But I think you guys get the point that I think a really good villain needs a really good laugh. Mm-hmm. But I think... go ahead.
What makes a good villain for me is a little complicated. My number one issue is when the entire plot revolves around the villain. Like, so if you take the villain out of the plot, the entire plot is gone.
There is no plot, basically.
Exactly.
But
like,
what if?
But what?
What if the whole point of that story is, like, it could be whatever, something like a character study, that then the villain comes in and sort of, like, moves the, like, he's like the catalyst for the entire plot, or, like, that's the whole thing with villains. I mean, forget what I said about character studies. In general stories, sometimes the villains is the catalyst for the entire plot, and that's, like, part of it.
That's fine. That's fine if it's, like, the catalyst, but it can't be, like, the source. Because the thing is, it gets really forced when it's the source. Because, like, there's no reason for there to be an antagonist if the entire reason is that that the villain is just there. It's better when a plot exists first and then an antagonist is the product of the plot. So an example of this, to illustrate what I'm trying to say, is the worst example in history, which is SAO, where in the first cour of the first season, the person who created SAO, the game, Akihiko Kayaba, he's the main antagonist, and he actively and passively antagonizes the protagonist Kirito throughout the entire cour, and it's super forced. This villain is super forced. Why? Because he's just there to be a villain. Like if you take him out, the entire plot, there's no plot.
But
Like
Not to
I
mention
will
the huge
say,
failure of
and-
the villain at the end, where it's like, oh yeah, why'd you do this? I don't remember. It's like, the fuck?
yeah, I was
see, like if you changed SAO to be what the villain is one of the players in SAO who is forced to survive, that would be a more interesting and organic villain than someone who just comes in Deus Ex Machina, like, I'm a villain, I am going to make your life hell, and then the entire plot is just fighting against the villain. And I don't really like that because it just, to me, it's really not entertaining to watch. It's really straightforward and linear, and I can't connect with these characters. Who cares about Kayaba?
I will say about that guy is that there is like a good idea there that he's sort of like again that goes back to him being a foil to Kirito, and that whole idea that both him and Kirito somewhat don't like feel, I don't know if belong, but satisfaction with the real world, and that's why they seek like virtual games or him actually building one. And I think that's a good basis for a villain. And then seeing like, yeah, both of them seek that type of life, but maybe different things. The problem is, what I just said is sort of super stretching when you try and dig for, I don't know, themes and meaning in SAO, because it's not great. So
See, I think this actually goes beyond SAO, because I think this is a common problem in a lot of shonen anime.
Definitely.
Because it ends up being like, the villain may not be in the very beginning, but the villain is clearly a product, or the plot is clearly a product of the villain, and
Which
not
is-
the other way around.
Which is a really boring formula, in my opinion, as an obstacle for the protagonist.
Now, if you have, like, I think, and this happened in Naruto, which is probably one of the reasons it stayed interesting to me, is because, like, who the villain is changes over time. Like, from one arc to another, it's a different villain, so you don't have one overarching villain in something like Naruto, where you have to, and part of the story of Naruto is you have to kind of figure out who the fucking bad guy is supposed to be.
but isn't like sort of the overarching antagonist is Sasuke to some degree?
To a degree. Yeah.
I don't know, I haven't watched Naruto.
I don't want to get into late Shippuden spoilers.
Eh.
I actually
well-
put it down at the very end of the doc, so we'll touch
What?
on it
Oh.
later.
Oh, Kaguya. Oh.
I was gonna say, in my opinion, one of the villains that contradicts this pitfall is S Death in Akame ga Kill, because which is a shonen manga and anime. If you take S Death out of Akame ga Kill, the main plot is still there. You have the rebels fighting against a corrupt government, but she is a product of the plot, and she is basically the main villain. And I think she fits in really well like that, and that's what makes her very interesting for me. That
How do you feel
you
about how
know-
she was treated at the end of the story?
Oh, shut up. We don't talk about that. But yeah,
I'm guessing not
so that's
well.
an example.
I'm guessing not well. The way she
No.
was treated.
I think
We're
what
not gonna
I
get
think
into
It's
what
it
Sho-
for a
so
reason.
dumb.
Well, no, I think what
It's
Sho
so
thinks
dumb.
is truly villainous is how she was treated at the end of the story. I'm sorry.
I
have
don't even get it. I don't want to even remember the end of Akame ga Kill. It's so horrible.
The villain was done right. The story wasn't.
Yeah, that's right. It had a lot of potential, and then it had a really rushed and stupid ending.
I hate when
Anyways.
that happens.
Yeah.
I do completely agree with you though that the villain should definitely be a product of the plot and not the other way around. I think when you do that, number one, you limit yourself to the types of villains, to how engaging you can make your villains, because the villain literally has to fit the plot like completely, because they are the plot. And
Yeah.
it limits the amount of creativity you can put into a story, which is why I think that I don't want to say that all shonen are inherently uncreative, but I think shonen, as the way that shonen is structured, leads itself to this more often than it should.
Yep. I mean, what part of the appeal of shonen is that it's a very linear, very simple plot,
Yeah.
but then that's a
Easy to
double-edged
pick up.
sword at the same time.
It's easy to pick up plots.
Yeah.
Yeah. But maybe that's part of the appeal of shonen then.
I think so. Yeah.
I mean, for a story to keep going that long and be interesting, you need to like change things up. You know,
That's true.
and one of the
That's
things
true.
is the villain.
I wanted to move on in the next point, and I just keep seeing someone wrote down motherfucking charisma.
Yeah, I wrote that in the document.
Why
'Cause
did you?
here's the thing. All right, think about some of your favorite villains. Okay, like let's take for example Dio, right? He's just a riot to watch because he's so over the top and he's so just exudes confidence and charisma. And you know what? A villain doesn't really have to be charismatic, but there needs to be like some side of him that is either compelling or just fascinating to watch, right?
Yeah, see, the thing about Dio in particular from JoJo's is that Dio's like a train wreck in slow motion. It's like, you probably shouldn't watch, but you can't look away because it's so fascinating.
Yeah.
Or another one
That's Dio.
is Zaya.
Oh, yeah, Isaiah from Zerara. That's a train wreck and a half in slow motion
But
to
it's
watch.
so
Oh my
addicting
God.
to watch because he has such a unique charisma. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
Yeah, I mean, and it's thrust in your face. Like every single scene that he's in, like his charisma is like it's there. He like subtlety is not something that Isaiah knows how to do, and it's portrayed in all of the interactions he has.
Yeah.
I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking of Albedo from Tokyo. Oh, not from Tokyo. From Overlord.
Albedo from Tokyo Ghoul.
Is she a villain though?
I say she's a villain in the sense that she's evil.
But she's not like a center character, really. She's not a foil for Ainz.
So my definition of villain is that it's evil. I don't care if you're a side character or whatever.
I mean,
So-
but
She's
there
not
are
evil.
these.
She just doesn't care about
She's-
lesser beings.
Oh my
That's
god,
not
look at her
evil.
character sheet. She's negative 500 evil.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I think this is this concept of like villain of the week. So a villain doesn't have to be like a villain constantly. I mean, it can just be there.
Well, anyways,
Albedo isn't like
whether
that, but-
she's a villain or not, I think she has a lot of quote unquote charisma in her own brand of it.
Yeah.
She's
Sure.
definitely very interesting and fun to
Dakimakura.
watch, and she is quite over the top, and she makes me laugh a lot. So I think that charisma and just being interesting and fun and like, entertaining to watch is a good trait for a villain to have. Don't just be boring.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's either I'll say this. It's either like be a fascinating character that it's like super entertaining to watch, or you just need to be like terrifying in the sense of whenever that character is on screen, like shit's about to go down, right?
Yeah. Well, it's like you said, anytime Dio was on screen, it was gorgeous.
Yeah. I mean,
And
the
that's-
idea of part 3, whenever he shows up, it's like, oh, okay, what's gonna happen?
And like he literally has this flaming aura around him.
Yeah, it's fucking terrifying, but
Like
fun at the
it's
same time.
a visual charisma that he has. You know what? Someone else wrote this down. Like stuff like that leads to like a humanization of these characters, and that to me is what makes for the best and most engaging type of villain. Is like if you can, not necessarily you personally can relate to him, but you can look at him and see, wow, yeah, this seems plausible.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is what makes for the best villains, and a lot of times makes for the most tragic villains, because you end up thinking like, wow, like they're doing these really terrible things, but kind of for the right reasons, maybe.
Yeah, the more you develop and characterize your villain, the more interesting they're gonna be usually, and the more the more you humanize the villain, generally, the more interesting the entire story is.
Dracula
yeah.
from
I-
Castlevania. He's
Yes,
exterminating
yes.
humankind for all the right reasons. I support him.
Or another really good example of that is like Scar from Full Metal Alchemist. He starts out as this like fucking psychopathic guy who's just running around getting revenge for the the country that Edwin, everyone, I can't remember the name of the damn country they were in, but that country like Ed and Alphonse and stuff were from. Amestris, thank you. That Amestris had declared war on his people and basically slaughtered a bunch of them, and he's getting revenge by killing all of these state alchemists. And then he learns the whole truth of I won't spoil it or anything, but he learns the truth behind it, and he starts to like sort of atone for what he's done so far, and it's like, I wasn't the only bad person here.
And beyond that, he also, at least in Brotherhood, he meets another character who's Ishvalan like him, and he understands there's another way to like fix this situation.
Yeah.
He's like, okay, let's try.
Yeah. And I think... oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to lead into the next point, but...
Oh, okay. And one last example of good humanization is the entire cast of Scum's Wish, where, they are all shitty people, but we really get into their head and we really get to learn what makes them shitty, why they're so fucked up. And that in and of itself is just, that was the entire purpose of the show. So that really made it an interesting thing to watch.
Yeah, and it's worth pointing out that I don't think that anyone in Scum's Wish is inherently evil. They just have some of them have really bad motives. But
I think they all do shitty things.
Yeah. I don't think there's a single person in Scum's Wish you can legitimately point to and say, this person is without any faults and they're completely heroic. And that's part of the reason why I love Scum's Wish. I don't think there's been a show, or at least an anime specifically recently, and by recent I mean in like the last 5 or so years, that I've watched where I felt like every single character in that show, I could envision them being an actual person.
Yeah. That's hard to do.
Yeah, it is really like you can a lot of shows do that with one or two or a handful of characters, but it's really difficult to get all of the characters in your show to be like that, to humanize them so much where you think all of these people could be people you could meet in real life.
Like, all of them are shitty people. They're just like actual people. Holy shit.
Yeah. So the next point I wanted to go to was this idea. I wanted to ask a question. Do you guys actually think narratively it's a good idea for villains to end up becoming heroes, or vice versa, heroes to end up becoming villains?
I think that what we were just talking about, humanization, that this is a form of humanization, that you can develop villains to become heroes and vice versa. And I think that's good.
Everybody else?
No, I agree.
I agree too. It's actually a lot of times it's really fun to watch that happen though, especially if it's done really well. And I mean the one I point to all the time, and thank you Nitai for pointing this out to me, is Kaiki from the Monogatari series.
Yeah.
Who starts out as this really scummy, not nice guy who's only in it for himself and money and just not a guy you'd want to spend a lot of time around.
And here's the clever thing with Kaiki as well, because like the whole point of him in the story, it's like at the end of the day he's like not really a villain, it's just like a dude. Like the whole brilliant thing in that season of Monogatari is they frame Kaiki as like this villainous dude who's scummy and all, but then you realize, well, and that's why it's such a good foil to at least the main character of that arc, Karen, is because she perceives him that way. She sees him as this villainous person who's like powerful and dangerous, but at the end of the day, it's like this old dude who just wants to make some money. But then again, he's still a shitty person, but then you go to like a won't spoil, but later on he does some things that to some degree redeem him. So it's an interesting character arc.
And he's still doing it for very selfish reasons. But he ends up doing good things for very selfish reasons.
Because again, they might be selfish, but it's not like they were really that villainous or like that like grand of motives. It's like, just want to make some money.
Yeah. And then he comes back and talks about meat for 5 minutes.
Motherfucking meat.
But to me, that's the best I've ever actually seen that done, to where an antagonist or a villain very slowly becomes the hero.
Well, you have clearly not seen Hunter x Hunter, Alex, and I know you haven't. Because when I think of this, I think of Killua.
Which I
From
find
Hunter
very
x
interesting.
Hunter.
He's named after a liquor.
Ah, yeah, I would drink that. Um, he
Hello,
he
yes,
starts out
911.
as an assassin, so he basically kills everyone. He's pretty sociopathic. And the over the 100 episodes, like his arc spans basically the entire show, which is 140 something episodes. He understands that he can't be friends with the protagonist Gon without killing him because he is an assassin and he wants to kill the people he gets close to. So his arc is that he needs to learn to get close to people without wanting to kill them. And it's really in depth and a really long process. And honestly, it's so beautiful. It's like the power of friendship, but it's actually really beautiful though. Because
It sounds like the opposite of the power of friendship. It's like the anti-power of friendship.
Well, you need the power of friendship to cure this bitch from killing everyone. But I really love it just because how long it is, really, because it spans such a large number of episodes that you really get invested in this progress of this character. And it's really amazing to see him slowly change and become able to have healthy relationships with other people. So I think that's a really great example.
I'll definitely agree
I've
with
never
that
seen
because
Hunter x Hunter, so I can't.
Same.
I've seen it, so I can definitely agree to it. It's the slow burn. It doesn't happen instantly, and it's not just one episode, like they suddenly realize something. No, it's the small things. It's one thing happening at a time, and it's all these things having a cumulative effect that gets you so invested. And it's beautiful once it finally turns. It's such a treat for having to finally get that reward.
Makes me cry every time.
Oh god, wow.
Yeah,
He's crying
pretty
right
much.
now.
Oh yes, please.
The emotional
Yeah, but
attachment you
again-
can get with that show. Oh God.
Again, you may be right. I don't know. I have never seen Hunter x Hunter, and yes, I will pronounce the X because it's fucking there.
Okay. Welcome to the English language. This is called silent letters. Another example I have is from Vinland Saga, which is
Oh.
currently a manga, but is getting an anime soon, and you should definitely watch it. And the character that is an example of this is the main character, Thorfinn, who is a Viking. So he raids and kills and is a participant to rape of innocent civilians. So clearly he's very villainous.
Clearly, he's an upstanding member of society. You mean?
Oh God.
Clearly.
So that's how he starts in the story, and I don't know how long it is, but it's really long. It's like at least 100. I could be wrong. You know, I'm not going to say the number of chapters because I don't know, but it felt...
It's a very long. I don't know exactly how many chapters are out now. I will say this before you go any further. It's worth your time investing to read this. It is a fucking phenomenal manga.
Great story, amazing art. It is really nice. It's very edgy if you're into that, but it also is
very,
just...
It's very accurate portrayal of Viking life, too.
It is very historically accurate. It's also just a really good war story, I think. If you're into that as well.
Is it
but
ongoing or is it a complete manga?
It's ongoing.
Yeah, it's still
and
ongoing.
It's very, very slow to update. So that's the negative.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he starts as a villain, and then, you know, things happen, the plot progresses, and he has to sort of deal with the deeds of the bad deeds he did in his past, and he has to learn to not function, but like he has to learn to cope. He gains a sense of morality because at the beginning he was basically a sociopath, but he develops a sense of morality, and then with that morality he realizes, oh, I can't pillage and rape and kill people. Oh shit,
What?
you know, those actual ethics exist. So then he has to learn to incorporate that into his livelihood.
Well, when I was reading this, I get the sense that like Thorfinn starts out as like this sort of model Viking citizen. Like he does the things that are expected of him, but then over time he starts to realize that wait, there's another way. Like maybe this isn't the right thing to do, and maybe we should like reevaluate the way we do things. And it's really fun to watch.
I don't know how far you've gotten, girl.
Probably further than you.
What do you mean?
I'm pretty far along, and at least to what's translated so far.
In Vinland Saga? Mm-hmm. I'm like one chapter behind or something.
Oh, then no, never mind.
Girl, please. Well, then you probably know what you're talking about, so then I'll agree.
I'm
not entirely sure what you're talking, because there's multiple stages of this manga. This is very complicated. Anyways,
I'm just saying that it's really fun watching him come to like that realization that hey, maybe this isn't the right thing to do.
Okay, have you reached the farm arc?
Yes. Don't spoil anything.
How can I spoil it? It's called the farm
Hi guys,
arc.
welcome to our Vinland Saga spoiler cast. My name is Joe.
Okay.
Fuck you. I'm trying to get the word out that there's actually a fucking good manga that the people should read.
Yeah, it's called Berserk, bitch.
I can appreciate your recommendation now that you've like gotten to the beef of the story.
Yeah.
Okay.
The beef.
The beef. It's what's for dinner.
That's what you farm in the farm saga.
Yeah.
I mean the farm arc.
The farm saga.
The farm arc of the saga.
Farm Saga Online.
FSO.
Exactly. But yeah, I completely agree with you about Thorfinn. It's fun to watch him sort of realize that, you know, he doesn't need to do this, and there's actual ethics out there, and it's like, holy shit. It's fun watching him slowly realize that. That's why I think it's such a good idea to do this shit narratively for villains and heroes to maybe switch sides. It when done right, it's really great to watch.
Yep.
All right, so the last point I kind of want to get to is this idea of what's known as gray morality. And I want to know if it leads to better developed and what? What did you say?
Keep going.
No, what did you say?
You just
I
made
said, ooh, baby.
a sexy comment.
It's not 50 Shades of Grey, you bitch.
Ugh.
Terrible book. I want to know if the idea of gray morality leads to better developed and more complex villains. Now, I think maybe we should kind of explain what gray morality means. So, gray morality is, and Sho kind of disagrees with me on this, that it has to be 50-50 good and evil. But for me personally, I think that gray morality is this idea that characters are presented as being neither inherently good or bad, or good or evil. As like they're somewhere in between, and they have both good attributes and what could be argued as really evil attributes. Starting off, the example that I gave is Legend of the Galactic Heroes. Like, I think that the gray morality is the entire premise of that show, and it's extrapolated in a quote from the show by Yang Wen Lee, one of the main characters, and he says that there are, quote, there are few wars between good and evil. Most are between one good and another good, which...
That's a good quote.
It is a good quote.
Take a shot every time we say good.
Where was I going with this? Oh, so, I mean... The whole point of me bringing this up is that in Legend of the Galactic Heroes, both sides in the story, which is the Systems Alliance or Planets Alliance, I can't remember now. Systems Alliance.
The different factions.
Free Planets. The Free Planets Alliance.
Free Planets Alliance. Thank you. And the Empire is... Neither side is inherently portrayed as being like heroic or evil. They're portrayed as being mostly good, but they also, almost everyone resorts to some really shady shit to get their stuff accomplished. And that's the point of gray morality for me.
Well, To be more specific, with your example there, I think that the government of each side do good and bad things equally, I think. But the characters, I don't think the characters specifically do good and bad things.
Some
But
do.
if we're talking about like the Empire versus the Free Planets Alliance, they both have evil and good incorporated into their policies as a government.
Yeah. It may not be 50-50, but it is some combination of good and evil.
Yeah. And I just wanted to clarify. We took this gray morality concept, well, from TV Tropes, the website. And when I read that article, I understood it as slightly different from what Alex understands it as. I understand it as there being a conflict between two parties or multiple parties that have their own interests, and no party is particularly good or bad, which is, you could say it's the same as Alex, but I think it's slightly different.
I think your hang up is that you think it has to be 50-50.
No, it has to be a group. It has to be this gray morality has to be taken in context of multiple people. You can't. I don't think you can apply it to a single person.
I mean,
Yes, you can. I mean, think about it. Like, let's go to like Western storytelling, right? Take Batman. That's sort of a gray morality, acting outside the law and like doing all of that. And he's not necessarily a villain, but there's some gray morality there.
And it's worth pointing out that everything Batman does is illegal.
Yeah. Boom.
Okay.
And Bruce Wayne is just one character.
If that's what you want it to be. I'm
Anyway.
just saying, from what TV Tropes described it as, there has to be multiple people. But whatever, it doesn't really matter. You can define whatever gray morality means to you.
Either way, the concept of gray morality does exist. I just want to know, do you think it actually leads to better developed and more complex villains?
I don't know if it leads to better. I think it leads to different types of villains. That's if it's better or worse. I think that's up to like the viewer or the one who's consuming the media. Because again, you can't have something that's gray and complex like the whole system in Psychopaths and Makishima to some extent, which are gray and like complex, and there's a lot to unpack there. But there's still a lot of merit to taking something like Kira from JoJo Part 4, which is a villain. There's like nothing redeeming about this person, but he's still a complex villain with his own quirks and identity. You know? There's like merit to both sides, in my opinion.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I mean, you could if you want to extrapolate a JoJo's example. I mean, you can think of the Speedwagon organization as being sort of morally gray because they operate outside the law and they just go and do stuff, and they never.
They aren't really touched up. I mean, I haven't read the manga, but they aren't really touched upon. They're just there.
Exactly, but some of the stuff it is pretty shady.
I think that including characters that do bad things but at the same time like do good things goes back to our original point of humanization, because real people aren't all good and all evil. Real people do bad things and good things.
Yep.
So it makes characters more believable, and so then I would say it's a good thing to have gray morality in characters.
Think about like the villain from at least the first half of Gurren Lagann. What was his name again? Lord Genome.
Lord Genome.
The
Spiral King.
Guy. The Spiral King. Think about it like that.
Yeah.
Up until the battle with him, he's seen as this like this monster. You know, he threw his daughter away and he keeps humanity
evil.
underground. Yeah, he's evil. And then right till the end, you can see a glimpse into his sort of like thinking. It's like, no, you're gonna ruin it all. You're like this is all for you to protect you, and you're like, fuck you, dude. That's at least what you're thinking. But then you get to the second half of Gurren Lagann and you understand, okay, what he did for a certain reason. It wasn't just because he was a dick. There's more to it than that. You know?
Okay,
so you sort of retrospectively think. yeah, so retrospectively, you sort of, I don't know if humanize the villain, but give him more layers and more, like, you understand him better, right?
Yeah, well, certainly by the end, for sure. I would think I think it's actually probably shortly after the halfway point when that starts to change in Gurren
Yep.
Lagann.
So
So
good.
like the halfway point in Gurren Lagann literally is a turning point for the villain.
Whoa, good storytelling.
I know, right? Wow. I will say this. Speaking of Gurren Lagann, it's going to be really difficult next year when Trigger's new production comes out, Premiere, and
Right?
literally Kamina is the villain. I'm not like
Yeah,
no,
so what's up
why-
with... Okay, yeah, I saw the trailer and that was like, okay, strange.
I don't know. I don't know any more than you know. All
It's gonna
I
be
know
great.
is it's gonna look fantastic, and it's gonna be really weird seeing the villain who looks like Kamina.
Hi.
Anyway, I just wanted to point that out because you talked about Gurren Lagann.
Well, back to gray morality. I think if we take it as meaning two different groups that are fighting for their own interests, not necessarily black and white, but just, fighting for what they believe in. I think a good example of that is Tokyo Ghoul with the ghouls versus the CCG. I don't think either side is wrong, but I don't think either side is right. Like, they've both done shitty things, and they're just at war with each other. And I think that if we take it, I mean, it's not the best example of this. I think Alex was spot on with his A Legend of the Galactic Heroes example. I think that might be maybe the best example. But to some extent, a lot of different shows and manga take on this concept of two different sides fighting each other, where one is not necessarily right and they're just fighting for their own interests. I'm thinking of the Seraph of the End manga and the Attack on Titan manga, which I won't detail, but like, I'm sure there's tons of shows that do that.
Yeah, I wrote it down. Like the Raildex franchise does the exact same thing. I mean, the science and the magic side they do some really, like, you look at it as like, what
Both
the
sides
fuck
are
is even happening?
really shitty. Like, you can't just root for one side or another. Both are really shitty. Obviously, there are good to both sides as well. It's complex. That's the wonderful thing about it. They show both sides in all glory, good and evil.
Yeah, and it's, oh man, so many dead bitty bitties. So many dead bitty bitties.
What does that even mean?
Watch it and
I
you'll
watched
find
the
out.
show and you'll find out.
Isn't there only one bitty bitty?
I'm
Maybe.
We won't
confused.
say shit.
Maybe not.
Oh my god. I'm not gonna even ask. But yeah.
Yeah, it's that concept.
I thought Sho said I don't give an ass.
I don't.
I don't give one ass, two ass, or three.
Jesus
Up to you.
Christ. What was I going with? Yeah, it's like you said, like they're God damn it! I just you said ass and it's got me all fucked up.
We're talking about multiple bitty bitty, and then you were going to
No,
say
it's
something.
I'm sure you've had some wet dreams about that.
Oh, shut up, you motherfucker.
You say that, but you're the one who commented on her chest being larger in this season, right?
Oh yeah, that is true. In Index season 3, there's definitely been a cup size increase for Bitty Bitty. I can tell. She is getting older though, so
Still
Out of your
not
strike
illegal.
range.
Oh no,
let me
it
tell you
only
something.
gets
Bitty bitty.
better. If you've seen her mother, oh my god.
oh my
God damn it, Shinoda.
You want to talk about MILF Supreme with no sour cream? Holy fuck!
You didn't just say that.
Yes, I did just say that.
Let me tell you, my boys, cream pie.
Whew.
Are we done?
Whew. Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, the idea that you can, the whole idea of gray morality leading to more complex villains, it is because it leads to them being more humanized, and that's what so many of these examples that we've laid out do. that it humanizes both sides of the story, both the protagonist and the antagonists.
And it also makes the plot less linear, in which, like, you know, how we talked initially about having the villain being the end-all be-all, and more just, like, interesting and organic and flexible, because, you know, there's multiple perspectives, viewpoints, and there's multiple people to root for, so it's much more interesting plot structure.
Right.
Yeah. That's it, unless you guys want to go over some of these examples that we missed.
Not really. Oh, I just want to say that just skimming through this, Darling in the Franxx has a shit ass.
Okay, I'm glad you brought
antagonist.
that up. I'm really glad you brought that up because I did want to talk about that.
Should I go?
No, we're not. I'm not going to spoil anything about the story. I want to talk about how it was done, like the mechanics of how that was done. So as we've mentioned before, we originally did a spoiler cast for Darling in the Franxx. We ended up losing the audio files for it, and we never re-recorded it. I'm sorry. One of the things we talked about in that show is how what ended up being the main villain of Darling in the Franxx, Verm, was introduced right before the climax of the show. I want to point out, for anyone out there who wants to get into creative writing in any aspect, don't ever do this. It is I guarantee it's the most tempting thing in the world because you think it's going to be a great twist right before the climax. It never, ever, 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 ever works.
It was garbage.
Don't do it.
Like, Darling in the Franxx fell into the pit where the villain was the end-all be-all, and even worse, they revealed it at, like, the last couple episodes. So it's like, you force in the villain, and then you force it even harder, and I'm like, this is so bad.
And I want to
this.
say, as like, Natai and I are both huge JoJo fans, and I know, Natai, you don't read the manga, but I have this sneaking suspicion that Araki is falling into this trap with Part 8. I really do.
Give him a chance. See. You know.
I seriously, like, it's been this part 8 has been going on for years now. We still don't know who the fucking villain is. So I just it's got me scared.
Do you sense like because I know nothing about Part 8.
I honestly feel like the story is trying to wrap itself up. Yes.
Oh, it's actually going somewhere.
It feels like it's trying.
I mean,
to.
who knows? Maybe there's not a villain.
Maybe,
right?
You know what? And I've thought about that. And Araki has said that there probably will be a Part 9. So I'm thinking, what if there isn't actually a villain in Part 8, and the ending of Part 8 leads directly into Part 9? You wouldn't need a villain if you did that. Or you could introduce the villain as the last chapter of Part 8. Don't do this, Araki.
Araki, do whatever the fuck you want, you legend.
But that's
you crazy
my
diamond.
That's my whole point, is that it's, as a writer, as anyone who does anything like creative writing wise, it is so easy to fall into this trap of wanting to introduce the actual villain of your story right before the climax, because in your head it always sounds like it's going to be a good twist, and it never ever works.
Because it gives you no time to develop them, so then they're just like a cardboard cutout of a stupid. It's nothing. They're so bad.
And then
They're
right
like,
after you actually introduce them, there's no time left to develop them.
yeah, they're not humanized at all. They're just like, I am the villain. Good job.
I will say the only time you should ever even attempt to do that, and even then you really still shouldn't, is if you're trying to develop a multi-part story and you know that the story is going to continue like linearly into the next part. Like, there's not going to be a huge time jump. There's not going to be like anything like that. Like, I think you could get away with it then, but no one's ever, to my knowledge, I've never seen that been tried.
What if it's a mystery story?
I still think
That's
it's
fine.
a really bad idea to introduce your villain right before the
In that
climax
type of
the
story, though, it could work.
I think
Only
Because then in
if you're
retrospect, all the
hinting
pieces will...
towards who it is.
I think it works as a well, depends. See, if the villain was introduced into the story previously but you didn't know it was the villain, then it's fine. But if they introduced at the end as of like the mystery and they were never part of the story in the first place, then it's bad.
Yeah, when it's a mystery, it's a whole nother concept is the thing. When compared
If you
to
think about
everything else.
it, Natai, that's kind of how Kira's introduced in Part 4 of JoJo's.
Yeah, but that's like, yeah, because they do raise the questions like, okay, someone's killing people in this town. What the fuck is going on? But it's sort of in the backdrop, you know? And I mean, sometimes literally he is in the background of,
Yeah, he's
like,
literally
some
in the
scenes.
background before he's
Yeah.
introduced.
fucking amazing.
Oh man, but yeah, I just please, if you are someone who wants to do like any kind of creative writing, don't do this. Don't. It's not gonna work. That's all I gotta say. It's like I really, you know what? And if Darling the Franks hadn't done that, and they kind of just went on with what they were kind of already developing, I think it probably would have been remembered way better.
I mean, they had like, it's hard to say without spoiling, but they already had one really Deus Ex Machina forced be all end all villain, and then after that they made an even worse one. It's like there's like two of them. There's like the small villain and then the big villain, and I'm like, you couldn't just end with one. Oh well.
It's a badly written twist. It really is. Anyway. Yeah.
Indeed.
No one wants to talk about Tanya, really?
Nah.
All right.
I guess it's just, my personal problem with Tanya is that she wasn't interesting to watch. She was boring and stupid, and that's why I didn't like her.
He won't be
But
on
that's
next
just
week.
Subjective.
Yeah.
Don't worry, show won't be on next week, guys.
Sorry that I'm not a lolicon.
Whoa,
that doesn't have
some-
anything to do with it.
it happens to be true, but it doesn't have anything to do with it.
It has everything to do with it.
All right. On that note, thank you out there for dropping in to listen to us. We hope you enjoyed it because we always enjoy bringing this stuff to you. If you want to check out previous episodes of the podcast, you can find us on YouTube, SoundCloud, and iTunes. If you want to keep up with what we're doing and have a little more fun, you can join our Discord server, become a member of our Facebook group, follow our Twitch channel, and visit our website. And as always, if you have any comments, criticisms, or concerns on this or any episode, feel free to shoot us an email or leave a comment down below. Links to all these things will be down below in the description.
That's
As
bullshit,
always.
but I believe it.
Exactly. As always, I actually did all that on a single breath, so hold on. As always, I have been your host, Alex, and I will see you next time. Say goodnight, everybody.
Good morning, everyone.
Good villain to
Yeah,
all,
that's it.
and have a good night.
I just want to say that the best villain is the ice in Yuri on Ice.
That's a pretty good villain. That's a pretty good villain.
What?
I'd say the best villain is the CGI in Berserk 2017. That's a fucking dope-ass villain.